Zizaran, welcome to the podcast. It's really nice to see you. We haven't talked in a while. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm Zizaran. I've been a Twitch streamer for 6 years now, and I primarily stream Path of Exile. I do throw in a few other games in the mix, but generally Path of Exile for most of the hours streamed. I'm generally known for starting out for just streaming an insane amount of hours. I used to have the world record in most hours streamed in 30 days, and starting to stream less now, like down to like 14-hour streams and stuff like that.
It's still a lot.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah, that's still a lot of time.
still a long amount.
you're supposed to become a dad soon as well,
In
right?
November. Yeah, late
Nice.
November.
Yay.
Very excited.
That's really cool. How do you feel about that?
Very excited. I've always wanted to be a dad, I think. I feel like a lot of my friends were like more like 20, late 20s until they wanted to have children. Now I was like always like, wow, that sounds awesome. Like so I've always been looking forward to it, and yeah, we're expecting our first child, a little baby boy, Liam, in late November. So very excited for that.
Nice, congratulations.
Congrats.
I can tell you, I got a 3.5-year-old, and it's awesome. It really is. It's the best thing in the world. I'm sure you're gonna be absolutely thrilled. It changes your life, but to me, it changes it in the best possible way. You know, I look back and I'm like, what was I doing before he was there? It's. But so congrats. That's really cool. Do you think it's gonna affect your career, like your streaming, because like streaming 14 hours, like, just by the way, kid, they sleep 2 hours, they wake up, they sleep 2 hours, they wake up. How are you going to manage that, you think?
So I have talked a lot to like Code Carnage and Quinn69 and other friends of mine that are gamers that still stream a large amount and have children. Um, and obviously it's always going to depend on how much your partner is willing to do and stuff. But me and Helena are going to have a similar approach to them where they are still like I am still planning on streaming a large amount, especially like early on. Um, like I don't think I will realistically be slowing down streaming because like I am our primary income as well. So there's obviously a lot of responsibility there. I'm planning to take 1, maybe 2 weeks off when the baby gets here, and
Hmm.
then I do have to get back to working and making money for the family. So
Yeah.
she's going to be handling like the majority of that, especially in the start. My parents are also going to come over and help the first month, and her parents are going to help out as well. So it should be pretty okay. I think obviously we're gonna have to play it by ear, but at least the initial plan is that I am still going to continue streaming. And she will do a lot of like a crazy amount of work on that end.
Yeah, for sure. Now, that's cool that you guys have a structure, because with the parents and the step parents, and that's really helpful. Yeah, I think having that is really great. I can tell you from experience. So, and that's cool. What makes you want to stream so much? 14 hours. It's a lot of time. Typically you're thinking about, if you look at the average on Twitch, you might see 5, 6, 7 hours. 8 hours being a lot. Going 14 hours. What keeps you going? What makes you stream so much?
So it started out with me starting streaming in 2015, and I was like trying to figure out how do I stand out, right? Because it's so competitive, and there were so many like really big streamers when I started streaming, like Ziggy D, Mathel, and just a lot of large streamers. And I wanted to find a way to like stand out. So part of that was then going to be like competing in like racing events in Path of Exile, being like the first person to achieve things like a certain level or a certain boss kill. And staying up a crazy amount of hours really, really helped there. So I would frequently do like 30, 35-hour sessions, and then even as little as like 3 or 4 hours sleep, and then back into it in another 30, 35-hour session. And that very quickly created like, I don't know if I guess you can call it like in the PoE realm going viral in that sphere, where people would very frequently it started a thing called the Ziz effect, and that was like people I would I kind of have like a very distinct voice. A lot of people don't like it, and I would get quite a lot of hate for my voice
Really? Hate
for a
for your
long time.
voice?
Yeah, a lot of people don't like my voice.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
but I sort of like took that
Welcome,
and
I
ran with
say.
it. I took
Like,
that and ran with it, and I was like, You know what? Like, and it sounds quite nasal. So I would get a lot of like, homophobic slurs. A lot of people thought I was gay just based on my voice. Very strange. But
Okay.
I took that and ran with it, and I was like, you might not like my voice, you might not like the way I talk or like what I do, but I'm always online. So when your favorite streamer goes to bed, I'm here. And people would very frequently write like, "Wow, I went to bed. This was streaming. I woke up. This was streaming. I went to work. This was
Yeah.
streaming. I came home. This was still streaming." That was
Yeah.
very like frequent, and that like propelled my stream, because first off, there's like multiple ways that ends up being a good thing, right? Because if people fall asleep watching your stream, they can't tune out. So you have like just it's a buildup of viewers, right, that are falling asleep to your stream. They're just building up, and then there's new ones coming in.
Yep.
Um, and I think that really helped. Like, plus the fact that people were sharing this so much, because I was doing something nobody else was doing. Nobody else was um, doing all those things. Like I was trying to merge things I saw in other streams that I really liked. Like there were like really really good community streamers like ZD Live, who would have like a really really close knit community, but he wasn't competing on the ladder or doing anything like that. But he had a very wholesome, great interaction, stuff like that. And then you had other people like have sorry, Havoc 616 and ETOP that would be competing on the ladder, but they hadn't nurtured their community or cared that much about that. So I was like, well, what if I combine those two? So I would be like doing this insane amount of hours while like reading every line in chat, even if like no matter how many people I had, I would be reading every line while pushing the ladder and winning events and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up with people sharing that. Like word of mouth is still to this day like the biggest way you can grow on any platform. When you're doing
Yep.
something where people share it and they go like, look what this guy is doing, no one else is doing this. um and that was like my hook. That was like to get people in, and then once you have people watching, you do need to like be interesting, do something worth watching once you do get that initial hook.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm always interested in talking about that, the grind that we hear so many streamers talk about. It seems you kind of did that in a way,
Sure.
but you also added your own special sauce to it, by not just grinding but also providing a lot of value, a lot of unique, doing a lot of unique stuff on your stream as well. Do you think that was like the perfect combination for you to grow, and you believe in that, in the grind as well?
um I think I think the grind is a okay thing, I guess, but a lot of people are just not going to succeed on Twitch. Like you do need to set yourself apart. I remember very early, a little bit after getting partnered, Twitch approached me and was like, "Hey, Ziz, we want to try to help like boost smaller partners, and we're inviting you to join a streamer group called Small Streamers, and we want to invite you to that to like help you give some more exposure." And I was like borderline offended. I was like, "What do you mean small streamer? I'm not small. People just haven't found me yet." And I've never ever like identified as a small streamer or ever used like a hashtag like support small streamers, because for me, and this has been very very core to me, is I would never ever want someone doing something for me out of pity,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know, like nobody really owes you something. If you stand out and you do really well, then word of mouth will generally carry you if it is that special. um so I think that was very important for me. And I think the grind is just like more like you can get unlucky in the short term, and that you are doing something really special and people don't find you. But so I'm part of the Twitch Ambassador program, and I actually really like that. I think it's a really cool program. So what I do is I very frequently will go around streams with like 0 to 5 to 30 to 50 viewers, and go around and see and like try to find other people that I've like never met before and talk to them. And I also post on like the subreddit for Twitch. um, and I offer a lot of people advice if they ask for it. Like a lot of people come to me and ask for feedback, and I find that very often a lot of the people that are small, like there are reasons for that. There's one guy that asked me for advice on his stream, and he was streaming long hours. Um, he came to me and he was like, "Zizaran, I'm streaming like 12 hours a day. I don't take days off, and I'm not growing past 2 viewers. Can you look at my stream and let me know, like, what could I do to improve? I've never seen somebody be silent for 12 hours before. He was literally just sitting there playing video games, and I was like, you can't do this. Like, why would you
Yeah.
watch your streams? And he was like, no. And like, you do need to do so. It's very hard to stand out, because for a lot of people, this is the dream job, right? The people like me that are able to make a living off it, we're incredibly lucky. Like, obviously, with being successful at anything, there's going to be hard work, and you have to like push hard to make it work. But we're incredibly lucky, and so many people want that same job, right? You get to play video
Yep.
games for a living,
For
like,
14
regardless if you're
hours a
working.
day, if we're you.
Yeah, but regardless of that, right? I'm still playing video games. And 14 hours a day, sure, like most people have a 9 to 5 though, and then come home and play video games. Like for me, video games is still my hobby. And then 12 to 14 hours isn't really that long, because people are probably working 9, 10, 11 hours a day and then going home playing video games 2 or 3 hours. So it doesn't end up being as crazy as it sounds when you really are doing something you love. But because it is so great, it is so competitive, and there's just such an insane amount of people doing it. And Discovery, I don't know if there's ever a way to make Discovery like super good on a platform like this. You're always going to have to rely on doing something so special that word of mouth carries you, I think.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think it's the same thing with most things in the world. If what you do is valuable for others, they're going to speak about it and you're going to get known for it. And so that's my personal problem with the grind. When we talk about the grind, is I think people get so focused on the amount of hours they need to put into their stream instead of spending some time thinking about what they should do with their stream instead. And so, as you said, like if you don't talk for 12 hours, it could be 24 hours. Actually, if you do like a full week live not talking, that might be something to try and see if you get something like someone to tweet about it or something. But like, you need to do something special, and I agree with that. What is the main? Because that's interesting. Because you're talking about like helping people with their
And like real quick on that, like the grind is still important, because the longer you're doing something, the less luck plays a part. Like you obviously can get lucky, and luck is always going to be a factor on things like this. But it's mostly like, how fast does this happen to you, right? When do you find those viewers that are going to like start telling other people about you?
Yeah, you open that window like wide, like more. The window's more open for people to find you, really.
Yeah. So if you've been streaming 2 years and you have 2 viewers and you've been very consistent, then maybe you're not entertaining, right? And then you need to find somebody in your life that will tell you. Like, I quite frequently will tell people that, like, currently what you're doing isn't entertaining. You're not particularly charismatic. This is things you can work on. And very often that's not what people want to hear. If you also go on the Twitch subreddit, it's a very large amount of people patting each other on the back without necessarily there being a reason for it. Because people get, like you said, very caught up in that whole, like, the grind. You're going to get there eventually. But you do need to make sure that you are doing the things that will get you there. You need to have a plan. When I started streaming, my plan was I was going to not stream for more than a year unless I was successful. I was planning to get partnered in 6 months. And if I hadn't get partnered within 6 months, I was going to quit at the year mark. But I got partnered 6 weeks after streaming.
It sounds like a lot of time and like a lot of mental effort doing this. Like, how do you keep yourself from burning out or getting discouraged, like when you're sitting for those long hours?
That's a great question. I've always been like, I've just always had an insane grind mentality. Like, that part has always been very easy for me. I remember the very first time that I really started grinding in life. It was just a video game. It was a very, very old video game from, I think, from 1995. It was called Albion. It was I didn't really understand English at the time. I think I was 7. And in this video game, I discovered, and I found it very complicated. I like barely figured out how weapons worked. It was basically like a role-playing game. Like
a DOS role-playing game or something? Or?
A little bit more advanced than that.
Okay.
It is very, very old school, and I struggled with it since I didn't speak English at the time. And I was just clicking buttons and, figuring it out step by step. I had a dictionary, so I'd like figure out some basic stuff. But I figured out that there was a weapon from the vendor that was really powerful, but it was like 33,000, 35,000 gold. And I had like nowhere near that. We had like 30. But then I realized that the healer I don't know exactly because I haven't actually. I should go back and play the game now that I do know English. But I found out that
I would watch that stream any day.
Yeah,
Let me tell you.
100%.
so I saw that the vendor or the healer with a certain combination, it was like 1 3 3 3 3 5 3, would give you a healing potion, and you could sell that healing potion back to the vendor for 3 gold, and you could do
Nice.
this infinitely. So I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, I only have to do this for like a week, and then I can buy that sword. So I just sat there talking to the vendor. Must have been like 60, maybe 80 hours.
Wow.
And then, like, I remember a friend of mine was going to play the game, and he was like, how'd you get that sword? And I was like, I showed him, and he was like, you're kidding. Like, there's no way you did that. And I did that in, like, a lot of my early games. So I remember just, I loved getting to the point where I could just grind one thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So that part has always been very easy for me. And if I ever do get bored of, like, Path of Exile, I would switch to another game. Like, last PoE League, I wasn't really enjoying PoE that much. So then I started playing Escape from Tarkov instead.
But I mean, talking about this old game and me thinking about Path of Exile, from what I know of it, like there's so many similarities because that grind, it's not just about grinding on Twitch for 14 hours, is that the game that you're playing for 14 hours most of the time is a lot about grinding to get, a gear that you're trying to go for. And so you seem to be a very resilient person. If I'm, I don't know. That's my feeling
Thank
when
you.
I listen to you and what I know of you. But but I'm curious how, on a game level, like what did Path of Exile do to keep you interested?
I think for someone like me that already quite enjoys grinding very repetitive things, PoE is like even easier because I would say Path of Exile is probably one of the best main games you could choose. Like if you really want one game that you really set your teeth into, I think it's one of the best. And that's because it gets so frequent updates. If you're playing something like World of Warcraft or Warframe or something like that, it can sometimes go like 6 months or even years, right, between updates and other games. Whereas in Path of Exile, you pretty much, with some exceptions, pretty much on the dot every 3 months, there's a huge new expansion, and like a reset.
Yeah.
So they're like that would be like a new economy. You have to start over again from scratch, and I've always loved that in every game. I went back for the World of Warcraft Classic launch, and I loved
Yeah.
the first 3 days of that. I really loved like the start of something, like when
Mm-hmm.
things aren't really figured out yet. Especially, obviously, that wasn't the case for Classic. But I remember when I first started playing Ark Survival Evolved, the start is so amazing. And PoE gives you that feeling over and over again every three
Mm-hmm.
months. So I think it's one of the hardest games to burn out of. Like for me, definitely. Like I I have slightly over 23,000 hours now. It's like between 22 and 23,000 hours in Path of Exile. So it's definitely getting to the point where if it isn't a league that I really like, then yeah, I will start burning out after like 400 or 500 hours. Um, Whereas when I first started streaming, I would stream between 900 and 1,200 hours every single league. So it is definitely changing right now that I've like done it such an insane amount, but it's still one of the easiest games to do anything like that on, I'd say.
Yeah. Absolutely. I haven't had the chance to play PoE too much in my life. I did play some Diablo, like I said, but I wasn't aware of that constant update. That especially in terms of like kind of what I've seemed to understand, like kind of wiping your characters and like having to start again. That's pretty interesting. It's something that I should try it. I should
You
go.
should.
I should try PoE. You should. Would you mind training me for a
Sure.
little 10-15 minutes so I can
Make sure to charge him.
yeah. I mean,
That's
we'll
actually
figure
what
it
I
out.
specialize in is like tutorial videos and
I
helping new
know.
players.
Yeah. No, but for real, that's super interesting. I feel like not a lot of games do that actually,
Mhm.
and for someone like you, it's
I think way more games should. Like
yeah, I
at
think
least
so.
like as an option. Like I think both are great, and Path of Exile has that where you have standard, which never resets. Like you always keep your stuff. You can keep grinding and making perfect gear, and then you have the temporary leagues, and they reset every 3 months. And I think more games should do that. I think it's very very good to have both options because obviously there's a lot of people that like always keeping their stuff, never losing everything. And
Yeah.
then there are those people that like the constant reset and the freshness. And
Yeah.
Tarkov is going to have the same approach, where Tarkov is
I
going
was
to
gonna talk
have,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, they're going to have like, I mean, they're still like early, right? They haven't fully released yet, so they're still. But last time I heard them talk about it, they were going to have the same system as Path of Exile, where they have a standard, never wipes. You know, it's just keep upgrading and building everything, and then they're gonna have a temporary thing that resets every 3 or 6 or 9 months.
Do you think there could be a formula where you can grind, like you can level up like this, but not lose everything, but also keep it fresh? Is that possible, or is it like one or the other?
I mean, sure, you could just keep adding to it and making new stuff, but it will always be a wipe, really. Like, think about World of Warcraft expansions. You're not losing everything, but all the stuff you had before is useless with the new expansion.
Yeah, it becomes obsolete. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
so it's just a semantic thing, right? Because people don't feel that same sensation of loss. And that's why I think standard is good, because in Path of Exile, you don't, the stuff you have is not getting deleted. It gets transferred to standard. So you do still have it. You can still play around with it and experiment with
Okay.
it. But if you want to play the new league, then you have to make a new character.
Yeah.
So I think that is like the golden formula. And then Tarkov does what I've been suggesting Path of Exile should, which a few other games I've played has done as well, and that is at the end of a wipe, before the new season comes, they do a pre-wipe event. They do really, really cool things that are like crazy. Like maybe things are dropping at a crazy amount. Maybe like loads of scary monsters, like the bosses are everywhere. So it's like an apocalypse event, and I think more games should do that at the end. Path of Exile doesn't. I think that's a bit of a shame, but yeah.
That's pretty cool. You play mostly one game, Path of Exile. You play similar games, the RPGs. We've done a few campaigns together as well. Going back to advices to other streamers, because I'm guessing a lot of them are listening right now. Trying to figure out if they should play one game and one game only, or if they should try different types of games. And it's a constant question in streamers' minds, and not knowing exactly if they're doing the right thing, air quotes here, they're doing the right thing. But when it comes to that, like what is your opinion on playing mostly one game versus variety?
So it is way, way harder to do variety than it is to play one game, because playing one game can be sort of like safety wheels if you're less talented in a way. The the sheer amount of personality you need to have to like successfully pull off variety. I feel like most of the people you see that are pulling off variety and doing very successful, they have extremely strong personalities, right? They're the type of people that will walk in somewhere
Yeah.
and you'll instantly notice them. They do set themselves apart. And there are several streamers I know that'll get like 2,000 to 3,000 viewers on their main game. They can go down to 100 viewers on variety.
Mm.
Um, and very often there's a couple of reasons for that. Sometimes your viewers aren't interested in anything else, right? They're not necessarily there for you, or maybe they are there for you, but they don't give a shit about the other game.
They're there for
And
you and that game, like that
yeah,
combination, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So getting people that are there specifically for you, you need an extremely strong personality. Um, I'm at the point where I have a large amount of viewers that will be there for me on any ARPG. So I can get like anywhere from like 2 to 5,000 viewers on like similar games to Path of Exile. Whereas if I play like Apex or something like that, maybe for a while I can hold like 2,000 viewers, but it'll pretty quickly go down to like 1.5k. And you do notice like the longer you stay on it, they're like, okay, cool. It was kind of nice to watch you for a while. And it depends what you do as well. I found that when I played Apex, I was very focused on the game, right? I wasn't constantly talking to my chat. I wasn't telling stories or entertaining people as much, because I was so focused on like, well, I'm very uncomfortable here. Like I have to focus on the game. Whereas in Path of Exile, I am so comfortable that I don't even need to look at my screen while playing, because
Yeah.
I know the game inside out. I know when I would be in danger of being in danger,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it completely depends on how you run your stream. But I would say it is infinitely easier to become a one game streamer, or at least a one genre streamer, because then people will not necessarily just come to you for your personality, but maybe they know like, oh, you are an authority, you are an expert on this thing, so I'm gonna come back for information. Whereas it is a lot harder for anyone, I think. to have that strong a personality on everything and be that entertaining.
So I'm curious, like, just kind of taking in what you said, and you're also a full-time streamer, how you juggle that like one game mentality with having sponsorships and being like, yes, I'll do this, or no, I won't, or will my audience like this, or will they not like this? Like, how do you take those things into consideration?
So I'm extremely open with my audience. Pretty much always, even when getting an offer, I will ask my audience, generally in the middle of the day, so there's the most amount of people there, and I'll like watch a trailer for the game, and I will be like, "What do you guys think? Should we do this?" Like, I'll
That's cool.
as long as the sponsor's okay with it, I'll mention how much they're paying. So I'll be like, "Okay, these guys are offering $3,000 an hour, $2,000 an hour. What do you guys think? Should we play this?" Sometimes they'll be like, "This is garbage. Don't play this." Um, and other times they'll be like, "Yeah, that is really cool. I'll tune in for that." And I find being very open with everybody has been really, really good. I'm extremely picky when it comes to sponsorships, in that I will never ever sign a non-disparagement agreement. Just basically, some companies will try to basically use you as a billboard, which is totally understandable. They're not
Yeah.
necessarily asking for feedback from the streamer, right? They do want to use it as advertisement, but I will never sign a non-disparagement agreement. I'll always make sure that I can say what I want to about the game.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've had talks about this because it is in our contracts here at Streamforge as well by default. But the idea, of course, is not to stop the creators to like speak their minds. It's more about like stay respectful when when you're giving feedback about the game, because of course, I think anybody in life, if you hire someone to do something, you want it to be done with respect, and that's basically the idea. But
Sure, of
for
course, but
sure,
there are
yeah.
definitely game companies that literally do want to just do.
Oh yeah,
Like,
oh
I
yeah,
have even been approached before accepting sponsorships. I've been like, "Here is what we want you to say about the game," and I'm like, "No, no chance."
yeah. No, that's yeah. I mean, I don't want to judge these types of behavior, but
Sure.
definitely not what we're in. Like we're
Yeah,
about here,
working
as you
with you
know.
guys have been great.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun working with you as well. Um, and so, but that's very interesting. Talking about sponsorships, like it can be like a real mess out there when you're, especially starting out. Like you seem to like, you're talking about your opportunities with your community, very open about it, even about the amounts and so on and so forth. How do you decide what game to? I mean, before talking to your audience, like, do you tell yourself like, I'm open to work, like
Sure,
play
sure.
anything, or do you stick to a certain type anyways when it comes to sponsorship?
So I do play a lot of games off stream myself. Like, even if I've been streaming 9, 10 hours, I will like sit there and play games for another 5 or 6 hours. I'll play games with my girlfriend as well. So I do play a lot of variety of games that I don't necessarily play on stream. And I have like pretty much a zero tolerance policy on mobile games. I think most mobile games are just, I don't know, they're sort of known for being very like exploitative. They are free to play, but then they're very awful to play unless you put like money into them, which I'm not a fan of. There are exceptions, like like balloons and like just cozy games that most people would enjoy that I would do.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm very very strict on what I play. I generally try to avoid if something has like heavy pay to win. Um, and I do, if it's not a game that I would like ever see myself playing or trying, that I just won't do it like at all.
Yeah.
I would say I decline over 80% of all the sponsorship offers I get.
Well, that speaks for itself. Like that's crazy.
Hmm.
80%.
Yep.
That is nuts.
There's
Um,
very many, like, I don't know, like, I get really excited when it's a game especially if it's something I was already gonna play anyway, then I'm like, "Oh, sweet, this is great, free money." But when it's like a good game and I know it's good and I have like friends that have played it and stuff, and I'm like, "This is great." But very often there's so many sponsorships that I'm like, "Yeah, I can see why they're trying to sponsor people, right?"
what would be an advice for someone, like I said, like that's starting maybe streaming, or maybe a smaller streamer that's just starting to get offers? Um, do you have any advice for them?
Always negotiate. So in the streaming world, even very early, I remember one of my first sponsorships, and I don't remember exactly how many viewers I had. It was somewhere between like 500 and 800 viewers. And I remember I was getting a sponsorship offer, and I think it was like $300 an hour. And I was like, hmm, that is a lot. That is like more than anyone I know makes per hour at a job.
Yeah.
But I also know that these are advertising budgets, and companies are generally willing to pay a lot more. So I countered with like a big email, and I showed my numbers, and I was like, this is very low. And I said I countered with like 1,300, and I think we eventually ended up settling on $800 or $900 an hour. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just throwing numbers up there, and I managed to go from like that small amount to like over doubling it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest advices I have is that don't like compare it to like normal jobs or anything like that. Like I have so many friends that even if they're big, um, like very few streamers have like management firms or anything, and they don't have any business experience themselves. Generally, most streamers I know, they're just gamers, right? They just want a game.
Yeah.
So they don't really know what they should be asking for or what they're worth. So I don't know. I would say that's the number one advice. Always negotiate, because whenever you're looking at like if you're looking at studies and statistics and stuff, streaming is pretty much the highest return on investment for companies compared to billboards, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, anything. Streaming is like the end all be all of ROI.
Yeah. Don't disagree, but I'll tell you something. To calculate some of those, like the value of campaigns, it has to be done right.
Mhm.
You know, and that's something that we were really working hard on at Streamforge, to try to figure out the true value of a creator. We've always, as you know, we've always wanted to pay fair share for the creator. It's really something that's is embedded in our DNA as a brand, as a company. But at the same time, is about offering a fair price for everybody, regardless if you're big, medium, small.
Yeah.
You know, what is the fair price that we or anyone else should pay you? So we're kind of working on something that might help us figure that out, but we want to go deeper than just your typical average viewers or your followers and even your clicks. I want to go to your sales and to how
Yeah.
you perform when you play certain types of games, certain genres, and so on, and kind of find that special number that can be helpful, because that's something we get all the time. Hey, we want to work with you.
I think
How
it
much
is
do you charge? I have no
yeah.
idea. That's what we get a lot, you know.
I think it is extremely hard on someone's like first campaign or like your first experience with somebody, because you can have um a streamer with 10, 15,000 viewers, and maybe like there's no engagement, right? There's no loyalty to the streamer where they won't interact with the sponsored content at all. I've like seen stats and stuff from that where there was a very very big creator, and there was like literally zero engagement. And there are sometimes content creators with 500 or 300 viewers that just get insane engagement with where
Yeah.
like literally everybody in their community like lining up to support. So yeah, it's very very dependent on how engaged your community is. I
Absolutely.
remember one sponsorship I did, the developer reached out to me and like said they've like directly tracked how much of a influence or impact my sponsored streams had done, and I think they had paid me $8,000 or $9,000, and they directly attributed it was over $80,000 profit they had made from those streams. So being
Wow.
able to like see that and learn from that was really really cool. So it very clearly has an impact.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I'm very careful that I only work with something that I think is good, and I'm very careful with it because I don't want to sell my audience shit, because I want my audience to stay around for a long time, right? These are people that are in my stream every day, and I don't want them to be like, wow, this is always constantly pushing shit in our face.
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna keep listening if you feed them, uh, something that you care about
Yeah,
at all times, something that you value,
yeah,
and you don't do it for the money. People are not dumb, they'll see right through you or anyone else. No, that's absolutely right. it's also in terms of calculating the return on investment for a campaign. Like looking at clicks is one thing, looking at sales is another thing, but there's also the things that you can't calculate. For example, someone may not get a lot of conversions, a lot of sales on paper, but the fact is it got people talking. You know, the
Yeah.
viewers talk to their friends and their brother and their sister and their mother, and they ended up buying more. We don't know, we'll never know, but there's always an
Yeah. No,
impact,
for
and calculating
sure.
that is like, it's very hard to
Especially
do.
with like direct links and stuff, because the amount of people that'll see you playing a game, right? If you're
Yeah,
say like you're not constantly gonna be saying like, oh, make sure you download it through this link, make sure you're clicking this link.
exactly.
A lot of people are just gonna be like, oh, this is playing Tetris. I'm gonna go on Steam and buy Tetris right now. And then 5 minutes after they bought it, they hear me go like, oh, click my Tetris affiliate link, and they're like, ah, damn.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, and so even Steam UTM link, which is pretty cool. We use it a lot with our clients, but it's still like not super reliable yet, because you click it, you get to a browser, then you get to the app, then it stops tracking because you haven't logged in on the website, and so it's like it's a click, but it's not really conversion. Obviously it's not perfect yet,
yeah,
and it will never be. And that's a tricky thing when you're trying to figure out the price, the true price that, you know, a creator should be paid. It's you need to take that in consideration, I think, as well, because you can't just be like, oh, you haven't sold the game like on paper through a trackable link, you haven't sold anything. Like, that's not right either. So very tricky, but
yeah.
good luck to us. um so what are you looking for in the future? I mean, you have a kid coming, you know, very soon, but in terms of your career, like what's coming for Zizaran?
Sure. So I started streaming, and my goals was always my number one thing was I wanted to be famous. I always like really loved the idea of like being recognized, and people wanting to meet you, wanting autographs, stuff like that. I always thought that was amazing. And I remember that was like a very, very big goal for me early on. And one of my first goals of streaming was for over a week to be one of the biggest channels on Twitch, like top 10. And then when I did the world record streams, I was like top six on Twitch for like over a full week. So like I managed that goal. Um, and now my next goal is more long term, being considered like top 10 on Twitch, which might be hard on the games I'm playing. We'll see. But I remember when I said that first goal of being top 10 on Twitch for over a week, everybody would just write like, LOL, good luck on Path of Exile. Until I had done it, and then they were like, oh, okay, never mind. And a lot of people were still around, and they were like,
Yeah.
I didn't believe, but I believe now. And obviously for me, that means I have two really big chances of blowing up on Twitch, right? There's always going to be curveballs or things that can be lucky and come out of nowhere, like just if big ARPGs show up out of nowhere. But the two big things that I have that is a big chance for me is Path of Exile 2. That'll bring an insane amount of people to PoE, and then we have Diablo 4. Those
Yeah.
are like the two big things that can happen, and have a chance to like push me
Which
towards
one
my
are
goal.
you looking forward to the most?
Oh,
I
PoE
mean,
2 for
between you and
sure.
I, we won't tell no one.
PoE 2 for sure.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
I was extremely excited for D4, and I was at BlizzCon, and I'm pretty sure you can actually hear me in the recording because I was sitting on the front row. And when they announced rune words, I am literally top of my lungs screaming. I'm like, yeah! And then they showed what rune words really was. And it wasn't anything like rune words in Diablo 2. I'm like, no! What have you done? I was like so upset. So like, I don't know, all my hype and everything like spawned and didn't live very long. I was very
Yeah.
disappointed in like some of the things they've shown for D4. I do know, like, obviously Blizzard has a way more casual audience. Path of Exile is very, like, extreme and in-depth, so they're very different
Yeah.
games. But, even, like, Diablo 2 level complexity would have been very welcome for me in Diablo 4, and I do hope they, when they first show, like, attack and defense as their two stats, and I'm like, oh, no, like, you're gonna go with two stats? Please, come
Yeah.
on, don't do that. So,
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to appeal to, you know, the masses with their
Yeah.
games.
And that's still a good
When
thing. That's still good. But
it's great. It just opens the door for a lot more people. The concept is great, but for fans of the genre that have been around for a long time, it
Yeah.
can be disappointing. Yeah.
definitely.
Path of Exile 2. What are the big changes coming up
So
with the
PoE
with the
2
sequel?
isn't actually a whole new game. It's marketed that way, and it's really, really good marketing because a lot of people are going to have the perception like, oh, PoE is so complicated. But now they've heard there's a PoE 2 coming. They're like, okay, maybe it'll be easier to start then. Maybe it'll be easier to get in. But it is actually just a really, really big like expansion, similar to the ones they do every like 6 months or every year, but they are a lot bigger. So there's going to be two campaigns. You'll have the PoE 1 campaign and the PoE 2 campaign. They're doubling the amount of ascendancies, which is like sort of like subclasses.
Okay.
Um, so there's going to be 36 or 38, I can't remember now.
Wow.
And they're removing like the socket system. Right now, something that's kind of complicated for new players is that, you know, you find a new item that's very clearly an upgrade, but then you have to socket it and chrome it correctly. Like it has to like fit your character. So they're doing away with the socket system. That's going to be moved to gems instead. So like your fireball gem will have sockets and slots, instead of like your body armor or your glove. So there's a lot of changes like that, and there will be more and more stuff, but it should be a very large change for the game. A lot
So
of
you're
new
stuck
stuff.
with PoE for a while. Is that it? You're sticking with it.
So Chris Wilson, the like daily, I'm just gonna call him CEO. The CEO like has like a 10-year plan for Path of Exile. Like they don't seem to be going anywhere. They don't want to make like whole new games.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, they have a lot to do.
I mean, they did a smart thing. There was a big opening in that market, and they went all in, and they made a lot of people that were disappointed with other games without naming it or naming them
You're
very
not our
happy, and they
folks?
what PoE seems to be wanting to do is to keep adding more and more content based on what you said, more and more content constantly, even working on a PoE 2, which is kind of just a big expansion and so on. But like, you know, you still got a good 10 years ahead of you, and I wish you another 50 years ahead of you, Zizaran. Thank you so much for being with us today. Can you tell our audience where to find you and when you stream and all the good stuff?
Just Zizaran on everything. I don't think you have. Yeah, I think I have literally Zizaran on everything. So Zizaran on
There
Twitch,
you go.
YouTube, Twitter. I at the start of a PoE league, I try to post 2 YouTube videos per day, sometimes 3. I stream every day. When do I stream? I usually stream like early,
If
early
you go on
British
Twitch,
morning.
he's live. He's live. Unless he's taking that 2 hour nap, he's gonna be there.
Early British morning. I like starting like 6 to 8 a.m. and then stream for like at the moment anywhere from like 8 to 10, 11 hours
Yeah.
around.
Cool.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much
Well,
for having me. It's really great.
thank you.
Thank you.
It was a real pleasure. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good.